Hi, I'm Angela Rosek, the Director of Implementation and Customer Support at Gallion Health. If you're responsible for the OR, supply chain, or revenue cycle, your calendar is already packed. You don't have an hour to sit through a traditional software demo just to decide whether it's worth another conversation. In the next few minutes, we'll walk through a complete Gallion journey, from case setup to bill only capture in the OR to supply chain and billing review. You'll see how vendor reps, clinical staff, supply chain, and finance all work from a single digital bill only workflow instead of spreadsheets and email chains. No jargon, no deep technical dive, just a fast, practical view of what it's like to use Gallion day to day. Let's jump straight into the product and walk through a start to finish case so you can see how Gallion actually works in real life.
Thanks, Angela. Let's begin with the vendor representative. When ready to capture consumed items, the vendor rep will begin creating the bill sheet. There are 3 ways a vendor can start the bill sheet creation process. Create bill sheet. This allows the vendor to manually create a bill sheet. Today's cases. This displays a list of the vendor's cases for the day. As items interface from the EHR into Gallion, the bill sheet button will appear, allowing the vendor to open the case and start building it. Case number search. This allows the vendor to look up a case using the EHR case ID. This is the method we will be using for today's demo. Once the vendor selects the case, the displayed case details are pulled directly from the EHR. The vendor will confirm that this is the correct case, and then open the bill sheet by selecting the bill sheet button. At the top, the vendor can see the status of the bill sheet, which indicates where the bill sheet is in its life cycle. The vendor reviews the case details on the left side to confirm the information is correct and that they are working on the right bill sheet. Once confirmed, the vendor selects Start Progress. Next, the vendor uses the EHR data comparison tool. This tool lets the vendor compare the bill sheet against the EHR documentation before submission. It helps the vendor identify and resolve discrepancies in real time. Items highlighted in pink indicate discrepancies. Items highlighted in gray are matches. As you can see, everything is initially pink because the EHR contains items that are not yet on the bill sheet. This is also supported in the bill sheet issues area, which provides additional detail about the discrepancies. Now let's add items to the bill sheet. Vendors can add items to 3 sections. Constructs, also known as capitated pricing. Implants and supplies, used to capture consumed implants and supplies. Wasted and used, but not implanted. Billing logic can be configured based on the client's definitions. For example, if an item was dropped by the vendor, the logic would mark it as not chargeable. Vendors must enter a wasted reason, which will later be reviewed and approved by the circulating nurse. For this demo, we will be adding items to the implants and supplies area. There are 3 methods for adding items to the bill sheet. Add items from EHR, the preferred method. This pulls items from the nurse's documentation. Search for items searches the ERP and EHR catalog, including Item Master, RFP, and special items. Create an ad hoc item, used for non-contract items. Items added this way are flagged in supply chain issues, signaling to the biller and contracting team that an item requires review. This early review results in cleaner purchase orders and invoices. For this demo, we will be adding items directly from the EHR. Because Gallion is integrated with the ERP, contracted pricing automatically appears on the bill sheet. This ensures contract price compliance. Vendors also have the option to enter a quoted price. Quoted prices are flagged for review, and the vendor can leave a note explaining the reason. Once all items have been added, the vendor uses the EHR data comparison tool again. Now the items show in gray, meaning the bill sheet matches the EHR documentation. Next, the vendor submits the bill sheet for circulator validation. Before submitting, the vendor enters the procedure details. Finally, the vendor acknowledges the attestation on the transition screen. Now that the vendor has submitted the bill sheet, the next step is circulator validation. This is where the circulating nurse reviews and confirms that everything the vendor is billing was actually used and documented in the patient's log. The nurse begins by using the EHR comparison tool. This tool allows them to compare the bill sheet side by side with their documentation. Because time in the OR is extremely valuable, this comparison tool eliminates the need for manual reconciliation. By quickly highlighting matches and mismatches, it allows nurses to stay focused on what matters most: patient care. If there are no issues, the nurse simply selects Validate. If issues are found, the nurse can verbally notify the vendor representative so the vendor can make corrections in real time. If the vendor is not available, the nurse can reject the bill sheet back to the vendor and include a note explaining the reason for the rejection. For this demo, I'll go ahead and select Validate. The nurse will then acknowledge and confirm the attestation on the transition screen. Once the bill sheet has been validated by the nurse, the vendor can no longer make changes. We often refer to this stage as pencils down. Any updates after this point require communication, coordination, and approval, ensuring that the integrity of the bill sheet is preserved. Now let's move on to the final step in the workflow: the biller review. At this point, the biller serves as the last checkpoint before a requisition is created in the ERP and charge capture is completed in the EHR. The biller begins by reviewing the bill sheet in detail. They use the EHR comparison tool just like the vendor and the circulator, and they also review any bill sheet issues or supply chain issues. In this example, we can see that there are no discrepancies. This means the bill sheet matches the EHR documentation for usage, and it matches the ERP for contracting and pricing. You'll also notice that the biller has more transition options than the vendor or the circulator. Because the biller is the final checkpoint, they can route bill sheets for additional review or correction when needed. If the biller finds issues on the bill sheet that require vendor attention, they place the bill sheet into vendor remediation. The system sends an email and a notification to the vendor with the biller's notes. The vendor will make the necessary corrections and submit the bill sheet back to the biller for processing. If the biller detects potential discrepancies within the EHR documentation, they can send the bill sheet to circulator remediation for further review by the nurse. Bill sheets may be sent to clinical review when there are questions or issues related to contracting, implant usage, or pricing. This is where the implant specialist steps in. This is the first line of contract interpretation. These items are typically flagged in supply chain issues. If additional contract clarification or pricing verification is needed, the bill sheet can be sent to contracting review for the contracting specialist to evaluate. In this case, the EHR documentation and the bill sheet match perfectly. There are no issues that require remediation or review. So the biller will now transition the bill sheet to processing. Once this happens, Gallion automatically creates the requisition in the ERP, completing the workflow. Angela, back to you.
That's a quick end-to-end look at Gallion in action. In this short tour, you've seen how Gallion helps you move everyone onto one shared bill-only workflow, from vendor reps and nurses to supply chain and billing, so information doesn't get lost in inboxes. Validate charges and documentation in real time, reducing back and forth and cleanup work after a case is over. Give leaders a clear, consolidated view of activity and impact so they can see what's working without needing their own deep dive demo. Our live conversations work the same way. We start with a focused, time-boxed overview and only go deeper where it's helpful for your team. If you'd like a version of this demo tailored to your data and your roles in 10 minutes or less, book a short session with us today. Click the button on your screen to get started.